You came to be known as a great interviewer, that you had a real skill in talking to people, whether it would be a rock star, a movie star, or a head of state. How did you first get interested in doing that?
My earliest recollection of broadcasting was watching David Susskind, Channel 5, New York City. I think the show was called Open End. I couldn't have been more than 8, 9, 10 years old.
The percentage of the worthwhile to the trivial and dismissible is quite extraordinary in television, given its 24-hour-a-day demand. Most newspapers aren't worth the reading. Most magazines are a waste of your time. Most movies are beneath contempt. A lot of television is good and thoughtful and trying awfully hard to agitate your mind or your emotions.
Just two stools, a black background without a fancy Tiffany lamp, and he would put one guest or more up and he would interview them. And it was open-ended, meaning when everybody had enough to say, Susskind would look at the camera and say, "Thank you very much and good night." It was the early days of television. It was great. It was great. I watched it at that age. I didn't understand half of what they were talking about, but I just loved the idea that people were having a discourse and a conversation in my apartment. Susskind was the first. Then it was Jack Paar. Jack Paar was the host of The Tonight Show before Johnny Carson was the host of The Tonight Show. Look these people up on the internet. His name is Jack Paar, P-A-A-R. David Susskind taught me the idea of open-ended conversations, no beginnings and no ends. You talk until there was nothing more to talk about. Jack Paar gave me the sense of compassion. One day he told a joke on The Tonight Show. The NBC executives did not like the joke. If I recall correctly, they threatened to fire him unless he apologized or something. He came out live on stage. Hugh Downs was his second banana, the Ed McMahon. And Paar said that there was nothing distasteful about the joke. He resented the fact that NBC wanted to fire him, so he decided he'd walk off the show, and walked off on live television.
There must be a better way of making a living than this. You have been peachy to me always.
Saying, "I'm not going to buy into your censorship." Some innocent joke. He taught me courage in broadcasting. And by the way, before Jack Paar, the host of The Tonight Show was Steve Allen, one of my real mentors and teachers. I had the great pleasure of interviewing him years later on radio.
In case you're just joining us, this is Tonight. And I can't think of too much to tell you about it, except I want to give you the bad news first. This program is going to go on forever.
On radio, I was listening to Long John Neville and WOR, Late at Night, and then I discovered Gene Shepard. Gene Shepard was one of the original radio monologists.
Look, I'm getting so tired of these joints with the candles burning all the time. I mean, candles are all right, but all the time with the candles burning and the checkered tablecloths, I mean, you know, after a while, there's got to be more than that. After a while, we've got to look out at that long hill that's going way off there in the distance, with the sun coming down and touching the edges of the trees with a golden light that sears the very shadow of the soul itself. I mean, you dig? You know? I mean, it's like you're looking through the back end of a kaleidoscope. And somebody has made it up in grays and blacks. I mean, you got to be able to see it, baby. So let's try to work it out, huh? Look, why don't you listen to me? This is important.
Years later, Jack Nicholson would star in a movie that had a symbiotic relationship to the Gene Shepard monology experience. What is monology? That is, when a person gets on the radio, plays no music, has no script, sits down, and talks to you for 3 or 4 hours extemporaneously.
On Friday evenings, we had fish at our house. Every Friday. Not on religious grounds, but because Grandpa was a fish enthusiast. Keeps you from going blind, he would say. Even though the bones always got caught in his throat.
He tells stories, usually about what happened to him that day. And he makes it come alive. This was in the tradition of storytellers and troubadours and people who just used the electric airwaves to share part of their lives with you. And years later, I would have the pleasure of meeting and shaking hands and interviewing Gene Shepard on a TV show that I did. He was one of my most significant heroes. And that's it. That's it. I would listen to these guys, I would watch these guys, and I would think to myself, what a joy it would be to do what they do. Right. Unfortunately, I had a terrible stutter as a child. And I talked like this. And I was incredibly introverted and a loner and somewhat lost. So of course, what would be my dream? To be on the radio and to be on television and talk to people. So when I finally left New York and came to LA City College and learned broadcasting, I had to learn 2 things. One was to talk without stuttering, and the other was to lose the New York accent, because I had never left New York. So when I came out here, I talked like, the guys in the corner talk like. And I was told, that to be on radio and TV, you gotta start to sound like people who don't sound like they came from any geographic part of the country. Because radio people are a gypsy band, They are like the whirling dervishes of words. They move through you and across the country, and the guy who sounds like he sounds in LA or Texas or Georgia or New York should all kind of sound like, hi, it's Bill Blank, midnight to 5, playing soft sounds for you till the morning. And as a result of the anguish, really, of stuttering, which is not a funny subject, and please don't make fun of people who do that, and for those who do, there are ways of getting beyond it. I learned to talk, but I spent a long time listening before I started speaking.
And how did this then, between David Susskind and you learning to lose the accent and the stutter, when did it dawn on you that you could be an interviewer? Were you at a class at a radio station? Were you?
Yeah, I was 17 and I was a lousy student and graduated George Washington High School after 5 years with tutors and the rest of it, with a 66 average and a below average IQ, and applied to a bunch of colleges. And the only one that had sent me an acceptance notice was LA City College. And I arrived in Los Angeles in 1963. I took a broadcasting class.
And did you like it immediately?
Instantly.
Instantly took to it.
Well, the first time, there was a little school radio station called KMLA. And if you opened the windows really wide and talked loud, you could be heard to the lunchroom. And we learned everything. We learned how to be a weatherman, learned how to be a sportscaster, learned how to operate a turntable, learned how to be an engineer, learned, you know, all the stuff about broadcasting. And the one that I gravitated towards was talking to people. And the first time I went into KMLA and did a live radio show at 9 o'clock in the morning, I knew I had found home.
This is KMLA in Los Angeles, 100.3 on the FM dial, the pioneer stereo station with 60,000 watts of power. There's more to come and you never can tell what you might encounter.